Well, Luca Watson, the political commentator with Young Voices UK, is here. Luca, good morning.
Good morning.
The German Chancellor said, I know the scale of the challenges that lies ahead. It's going to be quite complicated pulling together this coalition.
Yes, it will be. And I think this was expected. All the polls have basically come true. But this puts him in a very difficult position. Germany, for once, seems to be the country struggling the most in Europe. It's had a pretty torrid time economically. And it seems in recent weeks, it's had a terrorist attack on an almost near daily basis. So very uncertain times for Germany, which means, of course, very uncertain times for the rest of Europe.
And I think let's just be careful with the frequency of which we're declaring that they're a terrorist.
Daily, sorry, yeah. Weekly.
Well, we'll find out more in Berlin in about 10 minutes' time. There's quite a lot of stories about young people. Luca, seeing that you're with Young Voices UK, you're going to sort of be the resident voice of young people today. First of all, universities. Talking about student debt, the Times have done a really interesting piece. The universities where students still owe 90% of their loan repayments. There's a long list, and they're looking at sort of the different degrees and also the different universities that people have had. Graduates from more than 100 universities and colleges have paid back less than 10% of their student loan debts. What's going on here?
Well, I think the pattern is unsurprising in that it seems to be the lower-ranked universities, those which are less prestigious, in which people are paying back less of their student loans, whereas the higher-ranked universities seem to still have that significant wage premium, allowing people to earn more and therefore pay back. So I think this is going to become a real issue for the government. Higher education is already struggling. In recent years, it's had to rely significantly on foreign students who pay higher fees just to stay afloat. And I think this raises really significant questions about, for some of these lesser-ranked universities, is there a viable future for them? Or do we now need to look at perhaps thinking that they're not too big to fail and some of our institutions might need to shut down?
I mean, also, tuition fees was so controversial at the time when they rose to £9,000 a year in 2012. You remember that under the coalition government. And the Liberal Democrats didn't quite recover, I think, with young people, the sort of PR problem that caused. But right now, universities who are, as you describe, Luca, really struggling financially, they want those fees to go up significantly more. But the reality is the students can't afford, in many cases, to repay anything like half of the loan that they took out.
Well, yeah, and that shows how, in a sense, how useless it would be. Even if you increase the nominal number that people have to pay back, if students aren't coming anywhere close to paying that back, it doesn't matter. So I think clearly something greater is needed here, simply increasing student loans. I think it's gone up around 3% now since Labour came in. Increasing them marginally are not going to make a major difference. There's going to have to be sooner or later a reckoning about the whole nature of higher education in this country and its sustainability. Yeah,
it's really interesting. You can look at the Times online to look at the sort of interactive rundown of where students are not paying back their student loans. From university to school, this is, I think, going to spark another debate today, Luca. 1 in 3 children have skipped school in the past year, and the number of families reporting the arguments they're having on a weekly basis with their children about the very basics, you should go to school, I think frustrated me and was surprising this morning that something has shifted where school, either for children, but actually in some cases for parents, feels like it's sort of optional. I don't know why that is.
Well, I think one possible explanation is coming out of COVID and lockdowns, especially for children who were younger at the time. They got used to the idea that school was not a daily occurrence, that it seemed something that it was almost optional. So perhaps that's part of the factor. I think one of the more worrying signs from this poll here from the Times is that not just the kids who are missing one day of school a year, but there seems to be a significant proportion of kids who are missing weeks a year and almost chronically skipping school. So I think it is a very worrying sign. And also the reasons given for not going to school, that lots of kids simply don't enjoy it. Lots of them were worried about being bullied. I think that hints at quite a worrying trend of why kids just don't want to go to school in the first place.
Yeah, not enjoying it was the biggest cause of absence. That was sort of 15% of parents who said that. 9% points to a lack of special educational needs provision. You can understand why that would be. And 7% blamed their child's poor mental health. That ultimately is a factor we can't get away from.
Yeah, and it's very difficult because, of course, if a child does really struggle with school, if they do feel like they are struggling mentally, then it's not obvious that sending them in, forcing them in is the best thing for them. They're probably going to struggle to learn, to concentrate. and so on. So it can, in some cases, even exacerbate their issues.
What's really interesting, it's opening up the Times today, there's lots of photographs of young people fishing, and angling influencers have helped popularise fishing, so says the paper. And according to the Angling Trust, thousands of young people have been getting asked and applying for rod licences in the last couple of years. And what they say, supposedly, is it helps with anxiety. Have you been fishing, Luca?
I have. Well, one of my friends is a very keen and serious fisherman. He does lots of competitions and so on. So
Oh, wow.
he's taken me and got me involved somewhat. Not quite my thing. I don't think I'm going to look for an angling license myself anytime soon. But absolutely, I can see how it can be a very therapeutic, relaxing activity, especially for us young people who tend to be on our screens so much. It can be a way to really just detach from the world. And I think it also shows a positive side of social media, which is that it can be a way for people to discover new hobbies, new things that they probably otherwise would have never thought of doing.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's the classic photographs of people showing off the fish they've caught, but it's, much younger people than I think maybe you would expect in the pictures, in the piece. A quick thing we should mention, this is really sort of exciting potentially in terms of, we've just been talking about improvements and accessibility. Apple is releasing software today, which means people will be able to turn their AirPods into hearing aids, which feels like a really obvious but excellent way to use the technology.
Yeah, I think it's a really positive news story. And one of the nice things is that hearing aids can perhaps carry a bit of a stigma, especially if you're a younger person who needs them. Whereas with AirPods, they're so normalized. You see people using them all the time that it doesn't really hold that stigma. So I think it's a positive news story to start the week.
Yeah, it's in the Telegraph. It's nice, a nice read. Final thing, Luca, if someone stole your wallet, this is in the Times, and then with your cards they bought a lottery ticket and won the lottery, what would you do?
Well, yes, that's a difficult one. I would want to try and get as much money out of this as I could, I think. That would be my approach. And so this story here from France of a man whose card was stolen by thieves who bought lottery tickets, and the scratch card then came of £400,000, I think, of winnings. And essentially, unless the thieves step forward, the money will go. No one wins it. So he's offered to split the money. I think that would probably be my approach, at least get something from it.
Crazy. Luca, thank you so much. Luca Watson, the political commentator with Young Voices UK. This was the French